Biggest challenge? There are so many. I think being my first, back into the age groups of the under 25s, suddenly it was like, ooh, I'm quite a competitive guy. And actually, leading up to Portugal, we went back first thing the next morning, and I got straight on. And he tested me. I remember there being a conversation of a bit like, oh, is this too much, too soon? Yeah, he was backed. I didn't like him as a young horse.
Do you think that social media plays a big part today in the world of getting picked up by people?
Interesting.
Good evening all. So today I'm sitting here with Angus Corrie-Deane, who is an international dressage rider, competed for the UK, and I've been shoeing for Angus for a few years now. So we just thought we'd have a catch up and a bit of a chat about his journey and where he's aspiring to be in the future. So, Europe.
Yep.
How are you finding it?
Yeah, it's different. Like, I think the biggest difference is the scale. The scale of everything is just,
So for those of you that don't know, Angus is based in the Netherlands now.
Yeah.
And you've been competing all over Europe now, haven't you?
Yeah, so, I started competing for GB on ponies when I was 13.
Yeah.
And then kind of done juniors, young riders, all through that. And then to university, came out of uni, got offered this job to go and ride horses out in Holland. And I thought, well, I didn't really have too much responsibility here. So I thought I'd give it a go and kind of go and see. Mm-hmm. Go for a winter where there's an indoor school because we don't have one here.
Yeah.
But actually, I've really enjoyed it. And I've been down this year. We started the year in January in Exlu. Then we went down to Portugal for 2 shows. We've done Compiègne, and then I'm now back in the UK for Wellington this week.
How was Compiègne your first CDI?
Yeah, Compiègne was my first under 25 Grand Prix CDI with Jacob just a few weeks ago. It's a beautiful place. So we hadn't been to since I was in ponies actually, and they've really built it up, and it's really, really nice. It's one of those that the weather can either be like this and glorious, or really, really rain.
Yeah.
And we had the first day was like this, and we were like, yes, we're in for a good show. And then it rained. And the problem is in France, the sand, they don't have the fibre.
Yeah.
Because when it gets so dry, I think this is what the reason, when it gets so dry in the summer, the fibre just blows away. So they pretty much just have sand and they flatten it. But then when it gets wet, it just goes gloopy and sticks to everything.
How have you found competing on different surfaces with the boys?
Yeah, it's interesting actually.
Because different surface interaction,
for
obviously.
For sure, you definitely get different surface interaction, and it's one of the first things I learned about the shoeing is actually how important the contact between foot and surface is. You feel it, and I think you feel it in the springiness and just the feedback you get from the ground.
Yeah.
You do notice it.
And do you find that you've had to ride differently for different surfaces, or do you find that actually they compensate quite well? Because obviously you've got your home surface, and then you've got the surfaces that you compete on in different locations.
Yeah. I think honestly, if the rider didn't think about it, the horse would compensate absolutely fine. Yeah. And I think we do a lot of we ride a lot on different surfaces, whether it's we have a grass canter track, and we have 3 different arenas, all with slightly different surfaces. And I think if you didn't think about it, then there would be no problem. I think as a rider, what your horse prefers, any weaknesses, niggles, anything like that. So there'll be some people that see a deep surface and go, oh my God, but soft tissue, what about this? Or you see a hard surface and you go, oh, that's going to give a lot more concussion. So people back off, and then they think, then it can be easily, I would say, misconstrued that the horse backs off. I think actually the horse would adapt and go pretty normally.
Yeah.
But I think us riders often feel a difference and notice it far more than the horses.
I think it's the same as anything, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you know that there's going to be a change,
Mm-hmm.
especially as an adult, you are already predisposed to trying to be awkward with that,
For sure.
rather than just getting on with it. When you're a kid, it's a lot. It's, you know, you bounce, don't you? So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
And I think dressage is a sport where we try and control everything,
Yeah.
right? Us riders, like we try. It's you know, it's about discipline and it's about being as accurate and as possible. So as soon as something changes, we try a little bit to control it. And actually, I think the best art form is being able to breathe out and let go. You watch Jessica ride and she just lets go and it looks soft and easy. And I think that, of course, it takes years and years to get to the level there where you can just enjoy it.
Do you find that when you go up a level as well, you suddenly get different nervous jitters again?
100%.
You know.
So I had been riding Jacob at small tour level for probably a year. And small tour, you don't aim towards any Europeans or anything like that. So it's really about, you know, as a young horse, gaining experience in those atmospheres and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that was really fun. That was really, really fun. And I remember actually going to Compiègne, it being my first, you know, back into the age groups of the under 25s. Suddenly it was like, oh, okay, there's a goal to tick off at the end of this, which actually I like. And it's kind of just a step on, you know, the ultimate goal is to ride at senior Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So it's still just another step on one's, you know, journey, if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're suddenly aiming towards a more short-term goal, then yeah, the pressure increases for sure. And yeah, your first time, because I don't know, I think all riders like to do it differently. I'm one of those that as soon as I feel like I can go out and try the level, I find there's nothing more valuable for me than doing the test. Like, so, you know, when I used to revise for exams, I used to like doing mock papers rather than reading, you know, through the theories. So I like to kind of push the boundaries of going quite early. So yeah, there are the nerves that, you know, Jacob did his first clean line of 15 ones probably 5 days before we went to Compiègne.
Could have pushed it a bit finer.
Yeah. Well, we were already entered. But, you know, it actually came off in the show, and things that actually I thought were quite established weren't so established in the competition. So I think that for me is your best learning experience.
Yeah. Do you find that because dressage is a very movement-based sport, it is a very movement-based sport, and everything has to be so precise and everything has to look so precise, that is why there's that you have to look amazing, and there's that, you know, if you're not looking your best and you're not out for a jolly type of thing, you almost can't go out to practice. You have to go out to be on team top form.
Yeah, and in some ways, it's actually one thing that I've really enjoyed about moving to Holland. They do these like practice shows.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Where it's basically run by a judge, and we have one locally to us that's run by an FEI international judge, and it's almost a clinic. It's almost a clinic for the day.
Okay. Yeah.
And you pay €20. You ride your test. Your friend, you have to take someone with you. They sit next to the judge and film you. And you don't actually get a sheet at the end, but you get a video feedback. They mark you for each movement, and you can watch the video and get your marks. And that, you know, as a practice show, you can turn around and redo a movement. You can do whatever you like.
That's invaluable, isn't it?
Oh,
Something
but
like that.
it's like it's almost like an unaffiliated competition here in the UK.
Yeah.
But we choose the judge you kind of choose the judge you want to go to.
And
so
I imagine you haven't got the pressure.
No.
There's no pressure there, is there?
No, there's no pressure. And you know what? You see all sorts of big names there, and they're on, you know, crazy young horses, Grand Prix horses that are green to the level. It's a great one for just getting those flying hours in under the radar.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And as you've obviously gone from grassroots up to where you are today, was that all with the British programme?
Yeah,
Essentially.
So I started off with birds when I was 11, 12, and got into that, and actually really found the fun side of dressage. We did a lot of home internationals and going to Sheepgate and things like that, where it was actually really social. And then it slowly built up, and I got my first FEI pony and got onto the squads, and ponies was really good. It had really good structure that taught us to deal with the pressure. Like, we had great sports psychology and things like that to deal with the pressure, but also thrive with it a bit.
Yeah.
And then pushed on and on through, and then and then as you go through, it's quite interesting. The support, the initial support drops back, like the almost, I don't know how to say it, the forced support. The structured support drops back, but if you go and look for it, it's still there 100%. And then
it's almost teaching you to be that
bit
self-reliant,
independent. And then the parents pull out a bit, and the selectors want to speak to you, the athletes. And then the biggest thing for me that I think helped me go from like just being a rider to actually, I think horseman is very complimentary to myself. I wouldn't call myself a horseman, but to being more well-rounded in my knowledge was the world-class program. I think that was and is still invaluable. And that's how I met you, actually. It was through Ben, and I learned so much on that program.
That's because they just give you a well-rounded education on that, don't they?
Everything. So we did Farrier, saddles, vets, physios. But it's not so much like just having the saddler look at your saddle and say this. It's really, you would have like an hour-long saddle fitting just to check, and it was the whole purpose was to check whether your saddle fitted well. And it was, you would just stand and chat. How often when you're shoeing my horses, I'll just stand and chat with you, and that's where you learn.
Yeah.
Because we can be talking about something, and you can say, oh yeah, just look here, this shows it brilliantly, and keep an eye on this, and that, and we had it with your riding symmetry and stuff like that. That I've been able to convert nutrition, all of that kind of stuff. That for me, was fantastic. I think that is the way the BAF ran that was top notch.
Good, that's all right then. What have you found has been your biggest challenge over the last few years, going from the whole like under 18 to now under 25?
Wow, biggest challenge. There are so many. I think,
because you've obviously grown up a lot in that period of time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the biggest challenge was actually deciding what I wanted to do with my life. While I was at uni, actually lockdown came at a funny stage of my life where I wasn't really sure. I was going through uni and I was kind of weighing up future options. Then lockdown came. I came back here. We had the most glorious summer that year, and I was riding and just loved it, and decided actually that was what I wanted to do. So and I think also with anyone there's always insecurities and self-doubt, and my two horses I've taken since Jacob was 3 when we got him, and Darius was 18 months old. And there's always that self-doubt that you aren't going to be like, you've always you've done well enough through the age categories, but then actually as you go out there with the professionals and you're no longer oh, well done, you did well for a junior, you did well for a young rider. It's like suddenly it's like no, this is actually what you do.
You're not that young rider anymore.
No,
you are. And
so it's that is it is daunting, and you've got to be able to spin it and go, am, and I'm going to give this my
Yeah.
all, and I'm going to really try and go for it.
And do you think because the big names are so big, that's where it becomes that daunting thing? Like,
Yeah.
your horse, your 5-year-old could be competing against Charlotte's 5-year-old.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and yeah, at the end of the day, if you want to be the best, you've got to beat the best,
Yeah.
and you've got to thrive off that competition. But yeah, there's no doubt that when, you know, I trot down the centre line knowing that, you know, double Olympic gold medalist or however many Olympic gold medals she's got, loads, when you know that she's going in to do a test as well, you know that she is not going to give a single mark away.
Yeah.
And that there, suddenly, you're like, well, if I want to win, then I've got to be like top level, because she never misses.
Yeah.
If you watch, and I think it's quite interesting, with the way the technology is going in the dressage, you can often, on the Keep app, you can look down and look at people's protocols, like their score sheets.
Yeah.
And you look at the top riders, you look at the double mark movements every time. If you look at Charlotte, one of Charlotte's tests, every time it comes to a canter pirouette, you can bank it being a good mark. You know, because if you have a mistake there, it's 2% you've lost.
Yeah.
So you can't, you know.
And 2% builds up, 3% builds up. You know, suddenly if you're dropping 2% on
Well, that was the biggest thing. That was the biggest thing with BEF. David Hamer's main goal, I remember when we first started, he was like, it's marginal gains.
Yeah.
2% here, 2% here, 2% here. You know, suddenly you're 10%, 15% ahead.
Yeah, and if you can do that before you get into the ring,
then yeah,
it's a winner, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Have you got any advice for people that are coming up through the system now?
I always.
Obviously, everybody's different.
Yeah, my advice. I think what I found the most helpful, and now having just moved as well to Holland.
Yeah.
Is just ride as much as possible. Like, every horse gives a different feeling, a different, and you can never, no matter what kind of horse you're riding, just ride as many as possible, because someone once said to me, you know, everything you learn is like a tool, and you can choose whether you put that tool in your toolbox or actually you decide not to. But you only get that by just going out and trying and riding, and I've always tried to listen to anybody who has any opinion on. I'd always try and listen, and then you've got to be really strict with yourself about whether you listen, you take it on board, or you listen and you disagree. But I think that those challenges.
I always think that if you've been working with somebody or for somebody, or you've been trained by, like, had a training session with somebody, doesn't matter what it's in, even if you don't like what they're doing, at some point you might go, I've got this horse, or for me, in my case, I've got this foot on this horse. It's never going the way that I want it. I remember working for so-and-so years ago, and it was I thought it was rubbish then, but actually, will it work on this horse? You try it, and lo and behold, it works. And it must be the same when you're riding.
For sure. Yeah, and often, you know, for example, I had a young horse that I was just really struggling to. It was going really nicely. I had it, you know, walk, trot, canter around the school, and then it got to like the really steering and turning and stuff like that. And I was really trying to turn him, you know, with the outside rein, outside leg, you know, and actually I took it. My trainer came to me and said, take it all the way back to when you first started riding, and if you wanted to turn right, you turn right, and if you wanted to turn left, you turn left. Yeah. Just make it so the horse learns just to follow you. And I was like, yeah, like, you know, that's something that one learned, you know, when you first started riding.
Yeah.
And I was really stuck with this horse, because I was like, it goes so nicely in a straight line, but as soon as I want to turn, it just falls apart. And actually, it was because he was following the wall, if you like, and as soon as you took him off the wall, he was like, what do I have to follow? So you have to show him the connection. So that's where I think put as many tools in your toolbox as possible.
Yeah, and do you think that going away from home, I know it's only been, what, 6 months now?
6 months, yeah, 6, 7 months, yeah.
Because since I last saw you, you've definitely changed in confidence levels.
Yeah, I think for me, when I was here, like I was often riding alone. And where I am now, you know, I have my boss and her trainer riding at the same time. And I'm quite a competitive guy. And actually, leading up to Portugal, I was competing against one of them in the small tour class. And I saw how hard, you know, how they were preparing for the show. And they were preparing with great structure.
Yeah.
And they knew exactly what they were going to do. And obviously, you have to have flexibility. It's horses.
Yeah.
But they had a plan. And I think that I've become a bit stricter in my way of doing things, and not harsher at all. But often I would get on here and just be like, oh, not really feeling it today, or the horse feels a bit. And sometimes you'd even not make things up, but you'd convince yourself that there was a reason.
You can find an excuse for not having
and actually, when you're there surrounded by other people training, you know, everybody's got their own goals where I am, and they really want to work towards it. And I think that's a great way. I think a lot of people bounce off each other, and buddying up, I think would be a really good way. You know, if I were to move back, or when I am to move back, who knows? I think that's something I would really consider doing.
Yeah.
To have somebody like-minded that really wants to push each other, not overly push each other, but just to hold each other accountable a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, you know, why are you having an easy day? You know, this isn't part of your plan. You know, that kind of stuff.
I think accountability is a really key thing for whatever aspect you're in, isn't it? Because it's easy to go, oh, I had a hard day yesterday, I'll just slack it off a little bit. Or, you know, it's different if the horse is tired, because that's a different entity.
Absolutely.
Because the horse can't talk, well, they can talk to you, but they can't talk to you.
No.
But if you've like been out on the razzle dazzle, or you've just done something the day before that makes it a bit harder for you to get up and get going, then actually that's
where you need to be held accountable.
Yeah, that's where you need to be held accountable, and that's where somebody else needs to step in and tells you to get up, get on with it. And
I think also taking myself out of the situation of having all of my friends close, because I've lived here my whole life, you know, so I've always got mates about.
And at the end of the day, you've always got mum and dad to fall back on.
Exactly. So being able to take yourself out of that situation and really go and focus and really channel my focus. My life has become a little bit narrow, but I'm there to learn, and that was the decision I made when I decided to go. I wanted to go and commit for however long I choose to stay, to really push and see where I can get to, and what I can learn, what I can learn from the place.
That's good. Let's talk about homebreds.
Let's.
Go on then, let's talk about homebreds. Who have we got that's a homebred so far?
So one's just off being backed at the moment. We've got a few out and about doing things with different riders. I don't think I'm riding any yet, but we've got some really cool ones. Jacob, my top horse, mum in lockdown bought his mother. Somehow tracked the breeder and bought his mother. So we've got some really cool ones. We've got a Vitalis by her. That we love, and got a few others. It's now difficult, because of Brexit, and getting the stallions you want. I mean, we really struggled last year, which actually ended up meaning that Ebony is empty this year, which is maybe a good thing. You know, they need a year off every now and again. But, you know, this year we're now trying again, and we've tried once and actually didn't get the stallion we wanted, because he was promised out to other places.
Yeah.
And it just seems post-Brexit, it's that bit more difficult. Some stallions aren't available anymore.
I was going to say, have you found that the pool of stallions
Yeah,
has
it's got a lot
reduced?
smaller. And I think the UK is really crying out for some quality stallions.
Yeah.
Hoping that next year that I'll have one. I've got 1 2-year-old that is super exciting, I think. But
I agree.
You know, they're horses, so
Yeah.
you got to see.
I think that's the scariest bit, isn't it, with the homebreds, is that
It's a waiting game.
it's a waiting game, and also so much can go wrong.
Yeah,
I mean,
agree.
so much can go right, but
You have control. You really have control
that's true.
of the temperament. I mean, we had one she's now 2, and I remember when she came out, I remember sending you a photo when she was a day or 2 old, and I was like, I mean, is this viable? And you were like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. We'll get, we'll start. And then every 2 weeks you were out trimming her, just taking a little bit. I think it was with your baby rasp and clippers, yeah.
Baby rasp, baby nips,
Spring
loaded.
Yeah.
For my little hands.
Yeah. And every 2 weeks just taking a little edge off here, a little edge off there. I mean, you wouldn't even know now.
No, she's come on really well.
Really well. Wouldn't even know. So there you have control. Because I remember I wanted to buy a 4-year-old that was gorgeous, really gorgeous. And I sent you a video of it walking, and you just said, sadly, and it could have been totally avoidable if it had been trimmed well, consistently enough as a young horse.
Oh yeah.
It would have been great. But you said for the longevity of this horse, it's too compromised.
I remember that one. That was crooked.
It was a real shame, actually, a real shame. But
You've got your growth plate closure times. You've got 3 months for the very bottom, and then 6 months for the knee or the hock.
Yeah.
And then you're just kind of trying to fix it after that.
And I think you do an incredible job at that. You're super strict with trimming the young horses, and before I met you, I didn't appreciate how important that was. Like, it is, fundamentally important. Because as you say, like, I almost see it as like the flow. You've got as they get older, things start locking off, and if your foundations are screwed up, then
I always think, like, you can support things, and we do that all the time. That's where, like, your heart bars and your pads and your packing and your bar shoes in general, and the quantity of stuff that we carry around with us, that's where that all comes into play, because you can support things, and then, as we've discussed and I've put out on socials a lot, you can help surface interaction and blah 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 with different packages that you can put on feet. But at the end of the day, if you don't need to do any of that,
prevention is better than cure.
then 100%.
Yeah.
And if you just trim them every 4 or 5 weeks from birth, then actually you can prevent a lot from happening.
Yeah.
That then saves you.
Oh, it's really cool what you can do with
thousands
the babies.
and hundreds of thousands of pounds in the future.
Yeah.
And Darius and Jacob, you've obviously produced.
Yeah, with a lot of outside input throughout the years. But I've ridden them both since they were babies.
I was going to say you've ridden them both since they were young, right?
Yeah. So Jacob was just backed when we bought him, and then he stayed out in Germany for, I think we bought him in the March, and he stayed out, and then I went out for a 3 months in the summer. I'd never been anywhere near a young horse before. Like, I'm so grateful for Mum and Dad backing me on that, because I look back at it now and think they're crazy. You know what? I don't know why they did it, but
how old were you when you got Jacob?
15.
Yeah.
So I was still in ponies then.
And because I imagine even at that point he was quite a big. I know you're tall.
And he was naughty. I remember he tested me. We rode him the first day, and he was so well behaved, and everyone was a bit like, Mum and Dad were like, he was very well behaved. Let's see. So we went back first thing the next morning, and I got straight on, and he tested me. I remember there being a conversation of a bit like, is this too much, too soon? And Mum's way of always doing it was like this. I remember she bought me a Welsh Section B when I must have been 7, and I went to try it and I fell off it twice when I tried it.
So she bought it for you.
Yeah, literally. So she bought it, and I didn't go anywhere near the pony for 3 months. It was in that field over there, and it didn't move, didn't go anywhere near it. And then one day I was like, oh, maybe I will ride Sprightly, and turned out to be, you know, amazing. So Mum did it and negotiated a great deal, as only she can, that he stayed out there for training while I did my GCSEs, and then I went out and just learned about young horses.
Yeah.
I mean, because I had no idea. No idea.
I think there are, not that I am ever going to ride to any form of standard, let alone a high standard. Quality rider me.
Yeah.
But young horses are a different kettle of fish as a general entity. It's like kids. Young kids are different to
So impressionable.
Yeah.
So impressionable. And if you get something wrong, you can scare a young horse so easily. You've got to really take it steadily. And they can be dangerous. Like, so, you know, they can be so dangerous.
I think they're a lot more unpredictable.
So, yeah, because they don't know themselves yet. They don't have the experience that actually, you know, external shock happens, and by the time they've got to 10, so many external shocks have happened that they kind of go, yo, like, it might scare them originally, but they know that actually I've been with this human for 8 years and a mountain lion hasn't actually eaten me yet. Whereas, you know, a 3-year-old is like,
yeah. And Darius, did you got Darius when he was?
So Mum, we bought him as a 18-month-old.
Was it 18 months?
Yeah, he arrived. Entire was gelded within 48 hours of arriving. It's the only horse we've ever had to like board up in the box. He just didn't want to be a stallion.
I can well imagine that being a stallion would not have been helpful
just wasn't.
For anyone.
Yeah, it just wasn't his thing. And I think that's when they tell you, you know, the horses. And then he was backed. I didn't like him as a young horse. I found him piggy and idle, and so he was backed. Then I rode him for a bit. I think I tried to sell him, but I didn't ever put enough effort in. So he went back out.
Secretly, you wanted to keep him.
So he went back out to the paddock, and Mum was like, "Yeah, we're not gonna, you know, he's not gonna go cheaply. Like, we're not gonna let him go for free, you know." So I was like, "Oh, okay." Started riding him as a 5-year-old again, and then went to have a lesson with Nikki, and she was like, she turned to me and was like, I don't know what your problem is, but this is an incredible horse. Get on with it.
Yeah.
And I then was like, okay, fine. Let me build up his fitness. And as I built up his fitness, he got hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And then I was like, actually, this is the kind of horse I want, that I can turn on and I can turn off.
Yeah.
Because again, I think, having seen a lot of horses, I think those that are able to switch on and switch off are the most sustainable.
Yeah, and I think I agree. If they're on the go all the time, they've got to drop at some point.
Yeah.
And they'll always drop when they're in the position that you don't want them to.
Yeah.
How do you find your fitness regimes have changed over time? Obviously, as they've developed muscularly and through age, they've changed. But do you find that now that you know more, I know we discussed earlier how bringing other people into the fold means that you push yourself a bit more and you are accountable. But do you find that over the last 6 months or over the last couple of years, your routine for them has increased as well? Obviously, along with their work level, it has to a little bit. But
for sure. Well, actually, I think for a period of years it increases. So I think, you know, when they really start, you're looking to work a 3-year-old 4 times a week max for me, and work can be anything from lunging to in-hand work to getting on to going out for a little hack, you know, anything like that. They work 4 times a week, and then I think you slowly build it up. And then I found massively with Jacob recently, as he now knows the Grand Prix stuff is wrong, but he knows what I'm asking. If I ask for a PF, he knows what a PF is. Yes, we have to make it much better, and he knows the ones, and you know, all of that stuff. It has dropped massively.
Okay.
It's about keeping him fit. It's about keeping him interested. And just happy.
My next question was going to be: do you think that you have to keep it fun for you and for them?
100%. 100%. I've seen many a horse go sour, and this is this is one thing I always find quite interesting is when people, you know, talk about race horses, for example. I think it's quite an extreme example. You know, do the horses want to do it? And it's like, I think, from my opinion, I might be wrong, but the way I look at it is there are so many race horses out there that just aren't quite fast enough.
Yeah.
And that they end up going off and having a different life. And actually, is it because they weren't quite fast enough, or did they not have that killer instinct to actually, they wanted to be the first one across that finish line? And I think you can absolutely get rid of that drive, as you can in a person.
Yeah. I'm listening to a book called Born to Run at the moment, and it's about the I'm going to butcher this, the Tarahumara. Anyway, a group of people in Mexico, and they like run in sandals and barefoot and but they're really happy when they run.
Yeah.
And then they're considered like some of the best ultra runners in the world,
Yeah.
because they're always happy about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same, and you see that so often when a horse not even turns sour, just turns off.
Yeah, goes numb. They can.
Yeah.
They really can. So so Jacob now often one suppling day, then he might train one day,
Yeah.
then one day we'll go to the canter track and just have a hack. If the ground's nice enough, we'll have a trot canter. And then, you know, some days I've really started recently is just getting on and walking.
Yeah.
And making them give in every part of the body in the walk. And then that'll do for the day. And even, you know, and actually it's not a big strain on the horse, but that time in the saddle, like I said earlier about time in the, that would be my advice. That time in the saddle, you feel everything, and it's the patience that you have to show. Because often, I don't know, I find this, often if I'm struggling with something a little bit, I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll move on, I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get on and you go, I'm just going to walk today, and I'm going to make sure I get everywhere and walk, there's no point where you go, oh, he feels a bit tense, I'll just trot off, you know, I'll just distract him. It's actually like, no, I've got to diffuse this situation, because it can happen in a competition. And I struggled, especially with Darius, to do extended walk, pick up the reins, have him connected but not too hot, to then do the walk pirouettes. I just found that really difficult. So I've just practiced letting him out, picking him up, letting him out, picking him up, turning, you know, and just doing it, just repetition.
Yeah.
And finding out all the different responses that he wants to give, and working out a plan to. Yeah. So that when I go down this, when I compete, when do I compete? Thursday.
Yeah.
When I pick up the reins, hopefully I get one of the 20 different responses that he's given me in the past, and I have a way of dealing with it.
Yeah, and I suppose that's where knowing your horses as well, as you said, time in the saddle and getting to know them and getting to know their little individual quirks.
Every bit of them. I remember, well, you remember Tiny, my young rider horse. He used to come out in a different mood every day, like when we first got him, I remember, and that was about actually being around the horse for enough hours of the day to learn what made him tick, what made the moods change, and what made him feel uneasy. And actually, the best thing I found with him was to give him structure, like structure to a T. Every time, he knew every time I put my foot in the stirrup, I was going to get on, walk for this long, do these exercises in the walk. And it went from, because he went from doing juniors, him and I doing juniors all the way, and I think we did a couple of inter twos actually in the end. And it got to the stage from about, I'd say about 8-9 months after I got him, that I pretty much did the same warm-up every day. So that no matter how he was feeling, he knew as soon as that foot went in the stirrup, okay, this is our, and he found comfort in that.
Can you remember that warm-up?
The structure, God. No.
That's fair enough.
A lot of walk, leg yields, turning him, really getting him to let go in the, to be honest, it's pretty much the floor plan of a warm-up that I use now, of making them really let go both ways, transitions, making sure you keep the hind leg with the transition, but making sure each transition comes from behind and flows through the body. Yeah, I mean, you can always tell if you look at a trot transition and the horse picks up too much in the front end, you know that they've gone like that to pull themselves along. And the same in the canter. If the horse kind of bounces off, you're like, oh, that's not come through a soft back. And so it was a lot of that stuff, a lot of canter, trot, canter, because, and this was something I learnt again, BEF with Rachel Murray, and you'll probably know this better than I do. In the canter and the trot, the suppleness through the body is completely different.
Yeah.
In the trot, the rib cage goes from side to side.
Those multiple rib cages.
From side to side, and you know so the suppleness has to rotate like this, and in the canter, it's like from pole to tail.
Yeah.
So if you are able to warm your horse up side to side and pole to tail, then actually, on the whole, you've done. So you need to make sure you do a lot of canter, a lot of trot, and by changing, you create the mobility and the flow and the coordination between the two. Yeah. So I find canter, trot, canter is a great exercise, and it will tell you if you can't trot from your canter, and if you can't canter nicely from your trot, whichever you
got it right.
Then actually you need to take a step back and work on that until you can.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Do you think, changing the subject slightly away from horses, although we're still on horses, so do you think that social media plays a big part today in the world of getting picked up by people in the riding world, or do you think it's still all about quality and quantity?
Interesting.
It's a really interesting topic. I
think,
find.
For sure. I think in terms of sponsorship and stuff like that, I think it's moving away from athlete sponsorship. I think the top athletes will always be sponsored. Yeah. But I think brands are moving away from athlete sponsorship to influencer sponsorship, because it's the following, and what the brand wants is the reach, and the influencers can give the reach. I've always struggled with my social media a bit. I struggle with the consistency. I struggle with,
same as me.
Hence
having Sammy behind the camera.
I find it difficult. I find it difficult to. I try and show as much as I can without putting myself down and putting my horses down. That bad days happen too, and so many people. I think you have to be brave to do that, and I would say I'm not even brave enough.
I think it also depends on what level you're riding at. So we're doing a load more on YouTube now, and you will probably never see our top riders' horses around the country, around the world, being shot, because nobody needs to know how they're being shot.
For sure, and
that's partly because it's a privacy thing, although a lot of it would be really good to show how you can help these problems, but partly also because I know farriers that have lost sales worth hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds because 5 years ago they fixed a horse and then suddenly somebody saw it and then they went, well, this horse has obviously got an ongoing problem.
Yeah, and there's also a different, for me, there's also a different reason. You would never see on YouTube Pep Guardiola giving a halftime team talk. It would never be out there for the public because there's your marginal gains. Yeah. Right. So why would one share a little marginal gain, if you like, with your competitors?
And you've got the same in riding. So if you've had a bad day, but actually the next day's been awesome because you managed to push through that bad day, you don't want to show that bad day. But then you've got to have enough content to be able to show all of the good days.
Yeah, for sure. But going back, I don't think so. I think in terms of sponsorship, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's moving away from athlete sponsorship to influencer sponsorship. That's my impression. I think in terms of like who's respected as top riders, I think yes, there's a whole new world of social media that one has to take into consideration. Yeah. But I think no, I don't think social media is changing who people respect as the top riders.
Yeah.
It's giving greater insight into the top riders, because you do get to see some behind the scenes, but it's also giving a bit of a toxic insight, like we just said,
Yeah.
of you only see the good days.
Oh yeah.
And you know
100%.
what? A lot of people that I've taught and come to me with a problem, and you know, I don't see myself as one of the top riders, but when I say to somebody, oh, I had that problem too, they let out a big sigh and they're like, oh, good,
Yeah.
you know, because often it's just myself and my horse, or you and your horse, you know, it's just the two of you. And when you're on the horse, that's how big the world feels.
Yeah.
And actually to realise that there are loads of other people having the same issues. Yeah.
I think you see it in shoeing. All you see on Facebook, and including what I put out there, is you see a shiny job at the end of it, because that's all that people want to see. But also, to get to that, at some point something will have gone wrong.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, like you wouldn't, I guess you wouldn't talk about a horse that, you had shoed slightly incorrectly and then you'd gone and fixed.
Yeah.
It's then very difficult to talk about part B, how well the horse is going, considering what? Well, considering a mistake that I made. Yeah, I'm human, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah, or not even that, just it didn't, like, some things don't work for different horses.
Yeah,
you know, and you find that with your riding and your training techniques.
Yeah, for sure.
So one thing doesn't work for one horse and one thing
Yeah,
doesn't work for
and
another.
I think that's where you've got to trust your team.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I remember, you know, you always come to me with a suggestion, and for me, as much as I now know a bit about shoeing, and I can talk to you about the shoeing, and I can understand what you're saying. You know, I'm not a farrier. I would never ask. No offense, I'd never ask you for advice on what bit I should put in my horse.
I don't see why not.
Or what saddle I should have on my horse.
Yeah.
But then when I ask your opinion on the feet, it's because I trust you, I care for the opinion, and you know what? As long as it makes sense to me, and I believe that you believe what you're saying, I'm going to back you.
And I think that's it. And I think that's where you find a lot of people have problems with their farrier, the physio, the saddler, vet, regardless of which professional is that actually what they're saying is something that they aren't fully behind.
Oh.
So if I don't say something to you, if I'm not fully behind it, I'll probably go, well, we could try it, don't know if it'll work, you know. But if I'm fully behind it, then I will tell you that I need to do my job.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in that moment you've got to be brave enough as well that to get a second opinion.
Yeah,
I think
nothing wrong with a second
I think there's
opinion.
never, you know, so
I send photographs out to trusted friends all the time.
Yeah, and get your vet to look at you to check your farrier's work and yeah, things like that. I think yeah, you don't want to go behind somebody's back and seem like you're you know, checking up on their every move, but
I think the way that I look at it, and I think we've discussed this like the whole way through, is I've only got two pairs of eyes. I've only got one pair of eyes, and actually, you can't see everything, and that's why it's great when I've got other farriers that work with me, and that I can trust to look at things.
Yeah.
Because if you're on your own, you miss things not because you don't want to miss. It's the same when you're riding. You miss things not because you don't care, but because actually you've had a long day and you're on your 10th horse.
Yeah.
Or you've had a long day, or either way. If I'm on my 10th horse on a day, then something's gone wrong. If I'm on my own.
And a big thing for me as well, because I've had both my boys for so long.
Yeah.
You get into the rhythm of, I'm the same person, they're the same horse every day.
Yeah.
The things that I subconsciously miss and are my slight weaknesses, mistakes. Well, now I've been riding the horse for 6 years.
Yeah.
Those slight things that mistakes I've made are pretty now concreted in, you know. Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same for you when you get into the rhythm of shoeing a horse that maybe has a slight compromise, and you shoe it every time. You sometimes need a fresh pair of eyes, and actually that's why it's great that my horses have been away now. They've come back and you've shod them today, and you're able to look at them completely fresh and go, It's interesting. The increase in work has made their feet different, and where, I don't know, Darius was very straight and maybe a little bit toe in. Now you see where the muscle
structures improved. He's come out.
Yeah, he's come out, and it's a great thing to notice. So I think, fresh pair of eyes is
and I think
is great.
I do think that people just, and I think it's because everybody in the equine industry, there's so many people work for themselves. So actually, by getting a fresh pair of eyes in, it's almost like you're questioning their ability to do their job.
Yeah.
When actually, you're just going, just want to dot the I's and cross the T's, and I've got nothing against you, but and this person won't take over. They're just going to give their opinion.
And that's where you've got to have the confidence yourself as well. Like if I ever say to you, I'd like this guy to look at the feet.
But you've got to have that. You've got to have that confidence in your own ability to go, yeah, that's fine, because actually, if they pick up something that I haven't seen,
I want to learn.
Then I want to learn. Cool. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up. You've got horses to ride.
I have indeed.
I've got a family to go and see. Yeah. Where can people find you online?
Well, I do have social media.
Yeah.
I try and update it.
Yeah.
I like to put up stories more than posts, because that way I feel I get my character across a bit more, my personality. And then, there are clips of me riding on, there's a clip of me riding of Hoys on Clip My Horse. And
what's your social media handle?
Angus Corrie-Deane dressage.
There
all
we
one
go.
word.
Bosh.
All lowercase. There you go. There's the plug.
Nice. That's as good as me calling my business Harry Spinks Farrier Limited. It's like we went for full originality there.
Absolutely. Yeah. No numbers. Just boom.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much, Angus.
No, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And good luck at the weekend.
Thank you. Cheers.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then please like, share and subscribe, and hope that you got a lot of information out of it. I know I did.